Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, Giant Tortoises on the Move, Insights from Their Migration, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Josy Cardoso and Guezou, who is in charge of outreach for the Galapagos Tortoise Movement Ecology Program based at the Charles Darwin Research Center. It's a pleasure to have you both with us today, ladies. Josy, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Kendall. I'm just trying to see whether the cam is working so we can say hello to everybody, and then we're going to switch it off.
Not up yet.
You see us, Kendall?
Not yet.
Let me check. No. Okay, never mind.
That's okay. It'll save on your.
Kendall, can you?
I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. The webcam did not come up. That's okay, because that'll just save on your bandwidth.
Sure. The only thing is, can you do it again what you did before? Because this is like my camera is perfect. It's on. Sorry, we don't want it on. Perfect. Oh. Can you see us?
You are. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Just for a quick second. Otherwise, the internet here in the Galapagos is not going to work. I'm Josy, and next to me we have Anne.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Camera off. Kendall, can you switch our camera, please?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we would like to start. I'm very happy about this webinar. Long time no see or hear all of you. It's been about 2 or 3 months from my last webinar. Here, the things in Galapagos are slightly moving a little bit. Today, we're lucky to have Anne available to share the great information of this brilliant project that is Giant Tortoises on the Move, the insights from their migration. I would like to introduce Anne. Anne is an environmental educator and a botanist with a master in a tropical plant biodiversity from Montpellier University in France. Anne has over 20 years of experience in Ecuador and Galapagos. She first joined the Galapagos Tortoises Movement Ecology Program in 2010 to study the plant component of giant tortoises habitats. Now acting as the local education and outreach coordinator for the program, she translates the scientific results in meaningful ways for the local community, including young people and decision makers. So Anne, would you like to tell us more about this program?
Sure. Should I go ahead then?
Wait, here then.
Should I keep talking?
Uh-huh.
Well, first, greetings to everyone, and it's really a big pleasure, a great pleasure for me to be here to present our work. Our program has a long name. It's called the Galapagos Tortoise Movement Ecology Program. And it started 12 years ago as a multi-institutional collaboration among the Charles Darwin Foundation, the Galapagos National Park, the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior, and the San Luis Zoo. It relies on private funding or donations, including two main two main contributors, which are the Houston Zoo and the Galapagos Conservation Trust. The program's main objective is to improve understanding of the Galapagos tortoise movement, including migration, and the social, ecological, and sanitary aspects that might affect their conservation.
Great. And first of all, I think it will be great if you can introduce your team so we can virtually meet and learn about your background and who is working with you.
Sure. We're actually an international team, and we have here Dr. Stephen Blake, actually from UK, and Dr. Sharon Deem. Steve is actually the person who started the program when he came to Galapagos with his wife, Dr. Sharon Deem, who was working as a veterinarian for the Charles Darwin Foundation. And they are now in San Luis and still with us in the program. And locally, we have 4 people. You can see Freddie. Freddie is really our expert, our field expert, and also the life memory of the program who started the one who knows the most about tortoises. Then we have Ainoa, who is our veterinarian. studies the health of the tortoises. She's been with us for 4 years. She's also she's a Galapagos resident, originally from Spain. Freddy is a Galapagueño, what we call, and so is Carion, who is our principal investigator since last year. And myself, originally from France. I'm working more in the education and outreach part.
So you're here today to talk about migration. Would you like to first explain what that means and why it's so important to study this topic?
Yes, and just a little reminder, maybe we know about long distance migration and that are one of the most amazing spectacles on Earth. And I'm showing this video right now. I hope you can see it. That is, it's being created. It's like an animation from over a year's time, from data we have in a repository from hundreds of species that do migrate. And you can see that there is a lot of action all throughout the year. And you can also visualize how during the summer, it's a lot more up north. And as it starts cooling off, you can see again all the movements. So those are from all kinds of animals. It can be, lots of them are birds, but it can be also in the sea, so swimming, running, flying. And that means that they do find an interest if they are moving that far. So migration is not only amazing, but also very important for the animals. And it can be, you know, reindeers in the north, so we can have fish swimming, or it could be flying. Often we think of birds, but it can also be butterflies, for example. And also, as I mentioned, if they move, it's because there is usually a reason and a need for it. And what sometimes we don't think about is that if their migration routes are being blocked, that has effects and can have an impact either on their health, and even some of them can die, and that could even lead to extinctions of some species.
That's indeed, animal migration is spectacular. That's great what you show us on that video. And no wonder, as a Snap Hub, we have cool trips to see the migration of the monarch butterflies in Mexico. We also have the gray whales in Baja California, you know, the longest migration of a marine mammal. We have the great migration in some of the countries of Africa. So thank you, Anne, for explaining how the animals are moving. But I wonder why you choose to study giant tortoises.
Well, why tortoises? Remember, we're today in Galapagos, and actually the name Galapagos is the name of the tortoises, so we can say pretty much they're probably one of the most emblematic or iconic species on the island. And they're also, they've been known since the discovery of the island, mentioned by many visitors and travelers. We know they are on most of the islands, also on Galapagos, and so much that you can see we even have signs along the roads so that cars will be careful because there are some tortoises crossing on this. But also very interesting because these are examples of animals that have adapted, and depending on their habitat, they can, for example, in the shape of their shell can be different, as you can see, like dome shape or the saddleback shape. But probably even more important than that is, let's not forget that here there would be what we would call mega herbivores. And of course, usually we think of much bigger animals, but on the islands, they are really the mega vertebrates that will really walk around, open vegetation, open trails, really shape the vegetation, and also act as a disperser, meaning that they are very important in the ecosystems of Galapagos as engineers of the ecosystem.
That is fascinating. I'm always impressed, you know, me living here, walking through those forests in the highlands or in the transition zone are very dense with very spiny vegetation. For us humans, even with a machete, is so hard to open a trail. I cannot imagine how these creatures, these giants, open the trails in order to do their migration that you are talking about. I've always said to my guests that they are like a war tank. They just go, go, go wherever they want, breaking and opening everything that is around. But also what is so fascinating is that the terrain is not flat. It has a lot of obstacles. Again, for humans, it's so complicated, lava rocks up and down, hills. And imagine these creatures moving that amount of weight through this type of terrain. Also, I remember a long time ago, local farmers already discussing about tortoises migration. What was that what inspired your program to work on the movement ecology?
In part, yes, indeed. And already Darwin, when he visited the Galapagos, was fascinated by the reports of tortoise migrations and noticed, the trails also of the tortoises. And it's been known that by residents for a long time that tortoises do migrate, but actually they are more like vague reports, or sometimes they don't. There can be some controversy. And when Steve wanted to understand a little bit more about the movement of the tortoises, there was really not much to back up this information. So that's really what when we decided to start this program, so that we would know more about the movement that are really key to understand for the conservation of any species.
Incredible, Anne. It is fascinating that a long time ago, Darwin already suspected the migration of tortoises. And when Darwin was here was 1835. And finally, 2010, someone like Steve says, okay, let's track this migration that we know it happens, but we really don't know that much about it. Can you tell us in which islands you work and why?
So in 2009, we started on Santa Cruz Island, which is fairly central. It is an island that is inhabited, the most populated, and it's pretty high. It's over 2,000 feet, meaning that it actually has different vegetation zones. So we can go from the dry zone to like a transition and a humid zone. So on that Santa Cruz, we studied two species, which is the species from the west and the species from the east, which was just described a few years ago. Both are dome-shaped tortoises. Then we also started studying tortoises on Hispaniola Island, the oldest and easternmost island, which is much smaller, very low. It's less than 700 feet, meaning that it only has a dry zone area. And on this island, there is one species, and you see that it really is the adapted shape, the saddleback shape, tortoises on that dry island. Finally, we're on a third island, on Isabela Island, but on one volcano, the Alcedo volcano, that has one of the largest population of tortoises in Galapagos. It's even higher than Santa Cruz, over 3,700 feet in height, with a big caldera, and also has different, it goes from a very dry zone to a humid zone in the top part of the volcano. But this area is uninhabited. So the idea on this island, we have also a dome-shaped tortoises that you can see on the side of the caldera, on the rim of the crater. But we have 4 species on 3 different islands that have different conditions. Some are inhabited, uninhabited, and also climatic difference in climate. So that will enables us to actually compare and understand what are the different factors driving the tortoise movement.
That's incredible. Yeah. Actually, just a side note, the team, some people did actually I know I was in it, did the last expedition a few weeks ago to Alcedo volcano. You know, us as a guides were dying to get there because no people that lives here or guests, tourists are able to go there, just scientific expeditions. So hopefully we're on the list to be the assistant of Anne or Ainhoa to get there and see these beautiful creatures. But Anne, I wonder how you track the movements of these giants. Is it Freddy chasing them all day long, or are you using any type of devices, and how it works?
Well, we could use Freddy, I guess, but it would take a long time, and it will have to follow one tortoise at a time, which will probably outlive him anyway. So we did what is being done with many other species. We use devices, tracking devices, and this has been is a field that is really in great evolution. And over the years, we have new technologies that have come so that actually hundreds of species are being tagged and with in different habitats. You can see in the water, you can see in colder areas, but just also again showing how important it is to get information on the animal's movement. So for us, what we have as GPS devices, you can see on the pictures, and also just talking about how the technologies evolved. That's an example. On the left, you get the older, heavier ones that we had to put on the tortoises, and the middle time, and now we're just replaced since last year our tags with solar powered tags, which means that we don't need such a big battery, and they are much smaller and also much lighter for the tortoises. So this tag that we glue on the carapace, and you can see here it's a female. Usually, if it's a male, we put it on the back of the carapace, so it's better for the animal, and it's better also for the tags when it goes underneath, like Josy was saying, it goes underneath the branches and in the rocks. And the tag really gives us some information. It has a radio, so we can locate it again with the antenna, like you saw Freddy with the antenna. And it also has a GPS, so connects to the satellite, so we can get the location of the tortoise, and we've set it so we get actually a fix or a point every hour for each tag tortoises. And it also gives us other information like acceleration, also the we can see if it's moving like up and down, and temperature, and for some of them the humidity. So it's really a good tool to understand the movement ecology and also the physiology of the animals, knowing that they could, with information we gather, they can actually be live weather stations, and which will give information on a much finer scale that we could have with a satellite or even with radio. And these are actually being used with other species for that purpose.
That's very interesting. I can see how thick is the glue area. No wonder why, right? If they have to go under those bushes, spines, rocks, that glue has to stick that device together for all the time you need. Otherwise, it's a waste of money, a waste of time if that device comes off. So after 12 years of research, you must have a lot of information. Can you share with us some of the findings of this amazing project, Anne?
So from already in the first year, it was interesting on Santa Cruz that we were able to really show and document that there was partial migration for both species on Santa Cruz, meaning that actually the tortoises we tagged, most of them would travel from the lowland to the highland of the island, and on specific time of the year between the two areas, going back and forth. And that we can see in the darker colors are actually the most humid zone with more vegetation that's there all the year. And then you get to the drier zone along the coast. So you can see they really move, they migrate from the dry zone to the humid part. And also we were able to show that it's both male and females migrate, because sometimes people would say that only the female would migrate. And it was in a larger proportion, the bigger animal are the one who migrate most. Some of the tortoises did not show that pattern, and they don't migrate in there. Also important to know that in the humid areas on Santa Cruz, that includes farmland. So that means that those are areas that are being inhabited and used for agriculture or for cattle as well. So I just wanted to illustrate this migration pattern with one of a big male tortoises that we tagged on the eastern part of Santa Cruz. And that's over what you can see in blue is really the tracks of that tortoise, and that's over 3 years. So it clearly shows all the tortoise spend some time in the dry area on the right, and then starts moving up to the higher area on the left, which is more humid. And in this case, arrives, you can see like the shape of the farm on there. So it arrives in the farmland area, which is outside of the national area, the protected area, and then goes back again, like when it starts being hot and raining, we'll go again to the dry area. So that is about 5-6 kilometers, and that would to give you a scale for that. So that was like a clear proof of a migration in that tortoise here in Santa Cruz. And well, the also is we've seen movement. So why that will be on the western side? It wouldn't be as much as the 20 kilometers round trip back and forth. And what we've observed is that actually during the hot season, when it starts raining a lot, like now, there is a lot of fresh herbaceous vegetation growing in the dry area, which is a high quality food for the tortoises. And that's when they will start migrating, going to those areas. And then when it starts getting dry again in the cooler season is when we'll find them in the higher zone, where they will find food all year round, but not such a good quality. So it was the main driver, actually, is getting the food for the tortoises. And what we also found out is that it was mainly, as I mentioned before, the bigger tortoises. And if you see on the diagram on the bottom on the right, it's where there is the sun. It's actually to illustrate not the hot season but the dry season, and then you get the cloud for the rainy season. And that's when we get tortoises, like the small ones and the big ones, now in the lowland where they find really good food. But when it starts drying up again, it will be first the biggest one, and the bigger one are going to go back up. Whereas the smaller one that can still find enough food will actually stay in the lower areas until they get bigger. And from models that we have, we could also we could estimate that it really is to their advantage. You can see on the top part, in like where you can see the colors, the green and the red. And on the left side is actually what the extra weight the tortoise would put on. And we can see that the tortoise will put more weight on if it migrates, if it goes up to the highland in the dry season and go back down in the wet season. So actually, from our modeling, it was if the tortoise would not reach 300 kilos if it didn't migrate, it wouldn't get enough food. So it's really the ones that are able to migrate that will take will have better conditions.
It's incredible, Anne, because some of these giant tortoises, the males that tend to be a lot bigger than the females, you know, like in most of the reptiles, they can reach weights of 400 kilograms easily, and moving all that weight, right? And so quality of food drives the migration in order to be bigger, and bigger in this case helps them to survive. I mean, 400 kilos moving in that lava field through that dense vegetation, it just amazed me. And thank you, you know, until a few years ago, we thought only, I mean, the ones that migrate the most were females because they needed to lay eggs on drier areas. But now we can see that it's food, actually the main factor that drives the migration on our iconic giant tortoises in the Galapagos. I have heard that you have found that some tortoises can walk a very long distance. Can you introduce your tortoises champions? You know, when I'm asking this question, it seems like a marathon. Like who's the one that will run the farthest?
Yes, well, actually, our champions are not in Santa Cruz. And then when we went to Alcedo, well, they do have a lot more space to walk around. And if you can see that Alcedo also has the 3 vegetation zones with dry areas and in green, much wetter areas. And there's like a kind of a circular pattern that's actually when they walk around the caldera. Each color here represents a different tortoise on the drawing. And here you get the example of, well, we give them names. So this one is Isabella, and on the picture it's actually Isabella, which I know went to see during her last trip to Alcedo. And if you look at the scale on the lower right, which is 5 kilometers, it gives you an idea of the whole trip. Isabella is doing that only for 1 year. So they can walk up to 40 kilometers round trip on Alcedo volcano. And for example, Isabella, she walks pretty fast around the crater, and down the northern slopes and inside the crater. Also to note that while they're walking and migrating, they go faster when they reach an area where they're going to stay for a couple of months, and okay, they don't move that much. And then when it's time to migrate, they will again go back and move a lot faster. And then we also have another champion. This is Spiky. So Spiky, another female, which we had not located for the past few years, and we were very happy to find her again this year, and we're able to change her device as well. And Spiky does not really hang too much around the caldera. She goes down on the the southwestern side towards drier areas where she will also nest. Of course, like you mentioned, Josy, the females will go to drier areas also for nesting purposes as well. So those are very the ones that we have tracked that have walked the longest.
That's so impressive. I mean, I cannot picture one of these giant tortoises, 400 kilograms, walking 40, you say, right? Or 14?
40,
yeah.
Round trip
Yeah, but it's still a lot. I mean, those of you that have been here in the Galapagos, you know the terrain, and those of you that are thinking to come, you will see the terrain. I mean, it's not easy. 40 kilometers is a long. And so we know that not all tortoises species migrate. Why is that for? I mean, we can call them lazy ones or what?
Well, actually, some, even on Alcedo, on Santa Cruz, some of them, or at least in the time that we've tracked them, have not migrated. So a couple of them, and we're not quite sure why, just stay in the lowland or in the highlands. Note maybe also that the females are not as heavy as the males, so they will be smaller. But we have not talked yet about the third island, which is Hispaniola. And Josy, you were saying that some species do not migrate. And yes, indeed, that's what we found out in Hispaniola. That even though, and you can see here again with different colors, that they do move, but on a smaller scale. And what's the difference is there is not a migration pattern. So they will stay in an area, then they walk to another side, then they walk around. It's more like a nomadic pattern in the movement. And if we go back to actually what drives the migration in Santa Cruz and Alcedo, remember the food. Here, as you see, it's just one colored island. It's only dry vegetation and dry zone area, meaning that it's very dry for a large period of the year. There's not much food except for like opuntia cacti, and they will pretty much park underneath the cactus. And then when it starts raining, it rains all over the island. Actually, they can find food pretty much anywhere all around the island. So that will explain the different patterns, while some species will migrate and others not. And here, an example of Emma, which is one of the tortoises, as you see, saddleback tortoise. And that's also a picture of Emma. We're not putting any tortoises on the pictures. And you can see, look at the scale. It's only 800 meters, and that's her movements over a year. So if you compare to Spiky or Isabella, that's really really different. All these data are actually available. So anybody who is interested in knowing about the movement of the tortoise can go to the MoveBank site, that's where the data is being stored, and at least for our program is available. You can find other data for I think over 400 species in that same platform. If you want to go to for example, you want to know, let's see, there is a tortoise in Santa Cruz called Carolina. I want to see her movements, so I'll go to the move bank side, go in grass tracks. Then you can just put, not the long name, you could just put the Galapagos tortoise in what you are searching. And will appear on the left side, you can see all the names of the different tortoises that have been tagged. So then you can choose your tortoise, click on it, and you will see, like you see in pink on the map, you will see the movements, in this case, for example, of Carolina on the western area, western part of Santa Cruz Island. So I invite you to go check the move bank site.
That's amazing, because we can actually track on real time how our Galapagos tortoises are moving on the different sites on the different islands that you are doing the project, and you have the devices on these creatures. So now I would really like to know what happens with the baby tortoises. Do you also tag them? I mean, is there a tag small enough? Because the babies, when they're born, I've been lucky to see the babies from the Darwin Research Station, like from the breeding center of the national park, that they are the size of the palm of your hand. So how can you do it when they are born? So how can you follow them?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the baby tortoises, which everyone is always eager to know about. But just a little precision about the data, or what you'll see on the move bank. It's not in real time. It's when we download, because we do have to go on the field and download the data. And then once we upload the data is when you'll be able to visualize it. So, and thank you, Josy, for saying that, because it's something I forgot to say, and it's a very hard work to go tracking the tortoises, because we do have to, we do not receive the information directly on the move bank or on the computer. We do have to go in the field, find the tortoises with the antenna, because the device has the radio, so we can find again, and that's very hard, and that's where Freddie is expert. And that means many hours, many days, like you were saying, walking in very difficult environments, and finding the tortoise. So we do have, that's a lot of time. A lot of our work is actually spent in the field looking for the tortoises. And once we download the data, then we can upload it on MoveBank and use it. And for the little tortoises, so the babies, also we're very interested about their movement, because there is, there was hardly, let's say, nothing known about what we call the lost years of the tortoises. So we have started now for a few years, we're studying actually reproduction. So we do have some sites that we monitor. You can see here on the right on the map, different colors, which are three nesting sites for the tortoises on Western Santa Cruz. And we actually monitor the reproduction success and survival of the hatchling. And for that, we also have to follow them. So what we do is we also tag them, but because, like you were saying, they're so small and so light, we cannot use those big GPS tags. And at this point, we do not really have a GPS light enough so we can put on the tortoise, on the baby tortoise. So what we can put on them is that it's just a radio. So what you see on the little tortoise is actually a VHF radio, which means we can find that tortoise again, and that is very hard, because you can imagine already finding the big tortoise is hard, but when you have to find the little tortoise hidden, you go all the way down to the very hot areas because they're close to their nest, and you need to find them, and they're just the same color as their box, and they like to hide in cracks and crevices. It's very hard, and I cannot find them. I mean, I have to go with Freddie because I am just unable to do it. But once we find the little tortoises, then we will do a follow-up. You can see I measuring, we weigh them, we revise, their health, and we see how they are doing. It's like a baby, where you go regularly, you have the medical visit, and you weigh them, you measure them. And we also, of course, mark their location. But here we don't have a GPS, so we have to go find them physically, and then we know where they have been, which means we need to go pretty often, especially at the very beginning, because we don't know where they're going to go. So when they're just, when we've recently tagged them, we have to go about every week or every other week to locate them. That's a very, I would say, almost titanic work that we have to do. And what's interesting, that with perseverance and getting little by little the location of the tortoises, after about 5 years of data, we're starting to get a picture of the movements of the young ones. So on the left here, you can see the mapping of the movements of 3 young tortoises, Charlie, Matthias, and Moz. And you can see the scale. So it's of course, you can see the movements are not like the big ones. So the dark spot is actually the nest from where they were born. And then you can see that they move away. So what we've observed is the first month is where they walk, the further away from the nest, maximum about 600 meters, and then they stay. It's like they find a spot where they have everything they need. They got protection, they find food, and so far, we do not know what happens after that. So we've got to keep, getting information and tracking them to know a little bit more about all those lost years. So we have calculated when they might be from modeling, when they would start maybe migrating. But so far, that's what we have seen with the small ones.
No wonder, everybody. I mean, if you will have the chance to meet Anne, I know Freddy, no wonder they're so skinny. If they have to go and walk so many miles in order to find these little creatures. So also I wonder if there are any other devices that you can use to tag baby tortoises, so you don't have to walk that long to find the babies, all now with this technology that we have.
Yes, there is a lot of technology. Well, sometimes like new technologies is also very expensive, so not affordable. But also we have great hopes with a new program that is called the ICARIS program. ICARIS for International Cooperation for Animal Research Using Space, where actually scientists have worked together to really find out a satellite-based system to be able to tag small animals. So that means that we will have mini transmitters that we can put. In this case, for example, it will be perfect for our baby tortoises because it will be less than 5 grams. So you can sit, you can see the person holding that transmitter. No, it should be almost working. I mean, some of them are out, so they have encountered a little bit of some problems that they have to resolve. But we are still very hopeful that we can get some of those ICARIS mini transmitter to fit our baby tortoises. And then Freddy can just sit back in the office and go to MoveBank to download the data. Well, we still have to go to the field anyway, but yeah, so there is hope for that.
That's great. And one of the most important things is to work with the community and the local students. You mentioned that you are the program outreacher, the one that is in charge of that. Can you tell us a bit more about this part of your work? Does the whole team get involved in education activities?
Well, actually, the whole team does get involved. So I'm the person who runs things, but I always have everybody work for me. And from the very beginning, in 2009, it was really one of very important for Steve that we include an education part in the program, so that all especially the local community could be involved in knowing more about the tortoises and also becoming actors of their conservation. And what we really privilege, or what we favor, is experiential education or experiential learning, meaning that we go out on the field and we work a lot with children and teenagers or younger people. And you can see on the right, so where we are here with a group of young people on Isabella Island with Ainoa and Freddy. So in this case, the young people cannot really handle the tortoise, but we show them how how we measure them, we weigh them, how INOA is going to revise also their state of health or the health condition. And also, for example, INOA has helped me a lot with anything that has to do with the health of tortoises. And we have some activities where actually they go into the lab, they can look at tortoise blood and blood cells, and they understand also, so they can understand if we're going to take samples for the tortoises, or it can be feces samples or swabs. Actually, what are we going to do with them, how we study them. So for them, that was really an eye-opener, and it also relates to their own health. So it's interesting because they can understand what happens also if they go and have blood growth, and not even more so when they get PCR testing, and they can see, with the tortoises for a year, we've been putting the swabs in their eyes and their mouth. So for them, it's really something that they really like, those activities. They also, many of them have gone to what we call almost like the tortoise tracking safari. So you can see Freddie with the antenna who explain how to use the antenna, it's with the sound, how you get the sound and how that will guide you in the direction of the tortoise. And then the young people or the kids will actually go search for the tortoise for them. And also we have some events, and usually it's like on the right, it's some of the students or the teenagers who will share with other people, in this case with younger children, they share a whole lot of tortoises.
What I found very cool for saying is that I remember when the project started like a few years ago, the tortoises are named after some of the kids of some of the schools, right? So we say, I remember everybody that you're looking at the presentation, Moss is the son of a friend of us. So that also kind of gives them a type of ownership, and the kids are tracking the tortoises that have their names. So that's something very, very that it touched the feelings of the kids. But over the last decades, human development has increased in Galapagos. Is tortoises migration being affected by any human activities that we do here?
Yes, Josy. Just like most places on Earth, there is a lot more development, more people on the islands. Activities also are increasing. Also, we do have some habitat fragmentation. So there is, I would say, maybe threats or emerging new threats. We know, of course, of other threats like invasive species for the tortoises, but these that we just mentioned will actually affect or can affect the migrating routes of the tortoises. And as we saw before, it's something that is really important for the food and for their health and survival. Also, interaction with other species can really affect their health or could also help spread diseases. And also, we can't escape the climate change that will affect the tortoises as well, or could be their survival, but also things just like the sex of the tortoises. Since, for the tortoises, those species, its determination of the sex is temperature dependent. So there are some challenges for the tortoises, and that's also what we would like to share with you in our second talk is how really the work we do and the investigation is really helping gathering data information that will contribute to take informed decision and also to find solutions.
That's incredible. And yeah, in general, global warming is going to affect most of the reptiles because, as you say, they are temperature dependent. And we would love to have a second part. We will do our best in order to continue with this topic that we love about Galapagos, that is the iconic giant tortoises, and we can talk about what is One Health, why tortoises, an overall perspective of tortoises, conservation around the world. We can talk about the taxonomy, ecological role that you already mentioned a little bit about that being the engineers of the ecosystem, main threats, illegal trade, because we also have, people that wants to buy exotic animals, and tortoises extinction in the Galapagos, the reasons. So we have a lot more information to cover. Hopefully we'll be able to find a spot in this in the busy agenda of these ladies, and also with NatHab, we'll be contacting you. Thank you so much, everybody, to sign up for this webinar. And Kendall, I'll pass it to you to see if you have questions.
Great. Yeah, we've got a lot of good questions for you. And I just want to remind everyone who's watching, if you have a question for Josy or Anne today, you can submit those in your control panel under the questions field. Okay, first question. As the technology has made tags smaller, someone here is wondering if they could include cameras along with the GPS.
Yes, we do have, in some instances, we do have placed cameras, but those, it's harder to manage. So we couldn't have them on the long run like we do for the tags, for the camera.
Okay, and what's the amount of time it takes? People are really curious about how fast these tortoises actually move on their migration. And someone was specifically talking about Isabella and Spiky. How long did it take for them to do their migration that you tracked?
Well, usually if they are like going, or let's say on Santa Cruz, if a tortoise is going to go from the highlands all the way down to the coast, it could cover maybe, I would say maybe 10 kilometers in 3 weeks. But from our data, and I'm not saying it's true for all tortoises in Galapagos, but from the data we gathered, I think the fastest we had was covering 1 kilometer in 1 day.
Wow, all right. And how long does each transmitter last on a tortoise's back? And will the tracking devices eventually be removed from their shells?
The ones we put on the adults have about a 10 years life, and that's mainly based because of the battery. And so after 10 years, we do have to change them. So now we've just changed. I believe we've changed most of our previous devices, and now most of the tortoises we've tagged are tagged with the solar ones that you saw on the pictures. And we would like, we would like to keep the devices or the tags as long as possible. So I'm not saying they will have them for their whole lifetime, but because they are such long-lived animals, we do need to have long-term data and long-term monitoring. And it's, of course, on the same tortoises. So we could tag maybe more tortoises, but if we want to understand on longer terms, we do need to know for one same individual what the movements have been and how it's changed depending on the different factors or climates. So yes, we would like to have a long-term monitoring of the tortoises. Now for the little ones, for the radio, we have to change those radio every year.
Wow, that's a lot of work. Do the tortoises migrate individually or in groups?
Yeah, well, I would say it's individual, but you can find several, sometimes because they have such well-marked trails. So you could have several tortoises, I would say, fairly close by, but not because they're migrating as a group. It's still like an individual migration.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, just to mention, those trails that Anne is mentioning are done by the tortoises. They're not done by the humans. They're done by the same animal.
Yes, and not always. So if you go on uninhabited islands, and actually one guy once told me when he flew over Isabella that it was amazing, he flew by helicopter to see actually the trails. And actually those were tortoise trails. Now what happens is that for example, on Santa Cruz Island, because we do have trails also as humans. And if a tortoise find an easier way of walking, it will go along that way. So that's why often you can get, like, I wouldn't say like highways, but you can get some areas that they would rather go where it's easier.
Yeah, of course. So a few people are wondering if there's ever any problems with tortoises migrating onto farmland. Have there ever been any conflicts with farmers and tortoises?
I would not really say conflicts as per se, but if your resources is like you're growing, let's say pineapples, and the tortoise comes in and in just one day will eat, all your pineapple. You're gonna want and prevent the tortoise from going into your crops. So in that sense, you will have fences, for example. So I guess we could call it, maybe some type of conflicts, but in the way, because there has been some research also done on that aspect and the social aspect. And usually people are not, they say, they really like the tortoises. They say, well, they were here before we were, and it's their right to be here, but we have to find a way to cohabit, they say. And that's also one aspect that as a program, we're working on. So we want, and that's also where we can use our data to analyze, where they're moving, and for example, when there are obstacles, what's happening, also which kind of fences would be better, and to find actually both for people using the land and for the tortoises, what is the best way to cohabit.
Mm-hmm. So a few people are curious if giant tortoises ever swim, or do they only stick to land?
Well, I wish maybe Freddie was here to answer for me. I don't think they really swim because they want to swim. They can float, and they will bathe, and they spend hours in ponds where you can just see maybe the top of their shell or sometimes a little bit of their head when they want to breathe sticking out. So they do spend a lot of time in water, and sometimes when we get heavy rains, and sometimes like suddenly like a river appears or water running, they might get carried away in the water, but they won't go like swim as per se.
Mm-hmm. And for those watching who are unfamiliar with this, could you explain how temperature affects the sex of a tortoise?
Well, during the developmental period in the egg, there is a key time, which I think people are still working on understanding when it is, of development, but actually the temperature will determine the sex of the tortoise. And usually, well, for the species we have here in Galapagos, at higher temperature, you will get females, and lower, not much lower, but lower temperature, you will get males. And it's also something that is being used, for example, at the breeding center, so we can get a certain percentage of males and females.
Mm-hmm. And sort of on that subject, there are a lot of questions about eggs and reproduction. So I'm going to ask you a few things on that topic. How old is a female when she can start to reproduce?
Depending on the species, but probably I would say 25. That's what you said.
And how many eggs will a tortoise lay, and how long of an incubation period do they have?
So this will also can vary. It could be like few eggs, 6, 7, 8, to up maybe to like 18, 20 eggs. It also depends on which island you are and on which site. I think for us, usually they find like maybe 8 to 12 eggs per nest. And the incubation time also depends on the external temperature. So the warmer, it's a little bit like sea turtle nesting. The warmer, the faster, which could be like 3-4 months. And then the colder, the longer. And I think sometimes some of them it has taken like 7 months, or if you are in the higher areas that are a bit colder.
Mm-hmm. And what is the survival rate of the babies, and do they have natural enemies?
Well, the survival rates, it was from what we found, there is quite a lot of mortality, but we have not studied well, from the forward, but we have been able to follow so few of them that it's I would hate, you know, for it to become like a general statement. But what we have is, yes, in the little ones you do get mortality, but sometimes it's just because they fall, you know, they fall in the crack, they cannot get out. So we did find from the one we tagged some of them that died, but we do not have an exact really rate of survival or mortality. And the other part of the question,
maybe introduce animals also will affect them.
Yeah. So for natural enemies, basically we can say it's the Galapagos hawk. So that would be the natural. Now they do have a lot of introduced enemies, and that will be the pigs, wild pigs, feral pigs that can really smell the eggs, will open the nest and eat pretty much all the eggs. Then you get also some ants, some rats. Then you also have some, it could be just maybe wild cattle or donkeys or walking on the nest themselves that could destroy them. So that would be some example of introduced or invasive species threats.
Mm-hmm. And so final question today, people really loved hearing about your work with the local kids, and someone was wondering about what percentage do you think that the young kids end up being professional wildlife specialists?
Hard to say. I would be really unable to give a number.
Yeah, because you also, I mean, from my perspective, you know, when I was a kid studying here in the school, that's about, you know, like I grew up here. I came when I was 9 years old. In our school, we didn't have these projects that involve the community. So this has been happening lately. So maybe in the future, we will know how many people was triggered by this interaction with these projects, that then they later on decide to be a biologist, for example, or an herpetologist. That will be most known in the future, I would say.
And I don't know the number or percentage, but I do know it happens, because since I've been doing this work, I've met people who have been really discovered a whole new world. I would say also maybe our goal is not to motivate, you know, younger people to be like wildlife biologists or even biologists, but actually to really understand what is there, so that maybe just even being at home, they can have certain attitude. They can teach other kids, or also if they're here in Galapagos and then maybe they can work in some institutions or public institutions, and they actually can take decisions because they're well informed.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. All right, ladies, it's the top of the hour, so I'm going to call it there with questions. This has been absolutely wonderful, and we'll definitely get you on the schedule for a part 2 in the coming weeks. I'm going to turn it back over to both of you for closing comments, and we'll start with Anne.
Well, thank you very much for your attention to everyone, and I hope you I was clear enough and you enjoyed it, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have. So at the end of the talk, we have actually Ainoa's email address, so you can, if you have any doubt, any questions. And also I invite you to go to our website, the Giant Tortoise, that we are just about to finish renovating. So it's gonna go live, our new or renovated website is gonna go live at the end of this month. So please do go visit it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to thank Anne and Ainoa for the hard work in putting together this beautiful presentation. for us to learn about the giant tortoises. Me, every time when I do a webinar, I learn a lot. So hopefully all of you have enjoyed it. I would like to thank you, Kendall, for all your assistance, and thank you everybody for listening every day to the Daily Dose of Nature. Thank you.
Thanks again, ladies. And my thanks as well to everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, so we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.